Many an Excel worksheet contains date information. For example, the worksheet on the screen here contains information about hire dates. In another worksheet here, we see information about sales dates in column C. They're used quite a bit in Excel. The best way to understand dates is to first recognize that when you type a date entry, it automatically appears in the right-hand side of a cell. For example, March 4th, 2012, you might type it this way. It appears in the right side of a cell. As do all numbers in Excel. When you type values, they appear in the right side of the cell. Text appears in the left side of a cell. That tells us something right away. This is a value. But what value, and how can we work with this intelligently? In Excel, the entire date system starts January 1st, 1900. And although you are highly unlikely to use that date, if you do type that into a cell, 1/1/1900, what you actually have entered into the cell is the value 1. Every day has a number associated with it. This is day 1. Now, if you're curious, you can click the comma button in the number group on the Home tab, see what that value is. If you had typed in this date here, if you were curious, same idea, click that comma. Now, how often are we going to do this? Almost never. We usually don't need to see the number, but it explains what's going on behind the scenes, and it opens the door to the idea that when we put in dates, we actually are putting in values. And that allows us to perform calculations on dates and to do a variety of different bits of analysis using date information. I'm going to press Control-Z here a couple of times. This date system, by the way, works until the year 10,000. All leap years are understood properly. Monthly and yearly boundaries work beautifully. If you have worked with dates already in Excel, I think you know it's a pretty clean system. A tip here when you are entering dates is if you do happen to put in a date that's an impossible date, we assume it would be a typo, for example, November 31st of a given year, there is no November 31st. So what does Excel do here? It doesn't recognize it as a date. It just more or less assumes that's a string of characters. So like all text entries, it ends up on the left-hand side of a cell. So there's no value associated with that cell at all. Now, there is a potential problem here if you download data from the Mac. In the world of Apple, the date system begins in 1904. And if you are downloading data from the Mac, one thing you'd want to check almost immediately is in the ribbon, click the File tab and choose Options. And in the Advanced category, scrolling down here toward the end, you will see when calculating this workbook, use 1904 date system. Now, if I click this button and then click OK, keep an eye on those dates out in column J. They've changed. I doubt if you want to be doing that, but if you are downloading data, you're going to have to come up with some schemes, some ideas about how to make that translation. Working back and forth between the world of Mac and the world of Windows, you might have some issues here, and cleanup issues are not always so direct, but do be aware of that possibility and the fact that they do use different date systems. There is a slight flaw in the current system too, and that is that there's a February 29th, 1900, but most of us don't really have to worry about that. There really was not such a date, and yet the system includes it. Now, what I should do here too, before I do much else, is go back and undo what I just set. But you have to be alert to this if you're working in files that might have come from the Mac. File tab, Options, and again, in the Advanced category, near the end, when calculating this workbook, use the 1904 date system. Probably don't want that on most of the time.